Hello everybody, welcome back to Forza Horizon 4, and every time a new DLC comes out, I try and do a speedrun on the island. Whether it be on Horizon 3 with the Jag, Horizon 2 with the, I believe it was a Lotus 11, or Horizon, Blizzard Mountain with a Delta S4. I've always tried to see how fast I can go on the island that they've selected, and I was going to do that this time with the Rimac. However, that was a little bit too easy when I saw the map. There were lots of straightaways, lots of areas to get high speed, and I thought that's too easy. But the racetrack, we've never had a racetrack in Horizon 4, so how fast could you go around the oval track? Well, in order to do that, I set up three, checkpoints, if you will, around the map, around the oval. One being the tire wall on the first corner. That would be the slowest part of the track because, well, it's a very steep, sharp corner. Then we have a gate, a little timing light system on the straightaway right out of that corner. And we have a little bridge, little, gate, if you will, proper gate at the end of the second banked corner. And those will be our checkpoints. I will look at the recording, see how fast the vehicle is going at that specific corner, and then average out the speed, add them up, divide by 3, etc. And fastest average speed wins. And I started off with a vehicle that stood absolutely no chance in hell, but I wanted to see how it would do. The Top Gear Track-tor. This is a 1,350 horsepower tractor with a wing on it. Now, it was never going to win. It has the aerodynamics of a barn. It lives in a barn, to be honest. And it's, although very, very powerful, one of the most powerful vehicles, one of the more powerful vehicles here, actually. Tiny front tires, no front aero, no racing slicks, none of that stuff. And some wonky gears means we can only average around the place 138 miles an hour, very good for a tractor, especially on an oval circuit. However, only 138. And, it did reach a max of 150, I think, at one of the checkpoints, but it wasn't enough. Well, it's not enough, although I do love me the Track-tor. I wanted to fit it in somehow. I couldn't figure out how to fit it in, so I went with this, and I had a lot of fun driving. It was very fun. Yeah. Okay, I also didn't want to limit this to rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive cars, because at the end of the day, that's what all supercars are. Rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive. So I wanted to try front-wheel drive. And I decided to use the least aerodynamic front-wheel drive car in the world. This is a 900 horsepower, roughly. Volvo 850R, because British Touring Car Championship, duh. And truth be told, it was actually rather fast. The game reckoned at a top speed of 237. But on the oval, because of this slowdown point here, you can see at 141 as we go through the first checkpoint. The top speed was an impressive 167 mile an hour average, which is not too shabby, not too shabby at all, actually. Now, you will see AIs, that's because I filmed this just before the update came out, with the exception of the Rimac. And I didn't realize they had Rivals mode actually enabled, which, it took them, almost a year to do that, so, I would say congratulations, but get a grip, you idiots, anyway. Volvo. Surprisingly good, I liked it. It didn't get too much torque steer. It was overall a very solid vehicle for this. Again, it's going to suffer from this sheer traction, and of course, it is a wagon. It's not exactly the most aerodynamic thing in the world. And it has a measly 900 horsepower. The Rimac has twice that. So, it's certainly not bad, but definitely room for improvement. Although, a heck of a showing from a front-wheel drive estate car. Now, this is a very fast speedrunning car. It set several Bonneville speed records. Of course, the Shelby Daytona Coupe, one of the best cars ever made. And it's fast. Oh, it's fast. You needed to reach over 220 miles an hour when in a straight line. However, in the oval, despite being S2 class and massive rear tires with racing slicks and a super slipstream body, it achieved 178 miles an hour. It wasn't as impressive as I was hoping, simply because it didn't have the handling around turn 1. You see here, we're hitting a very impressive 200 miles an hour on the banking, and as we go across the, we go underneath the gateway here, the arch, 206 miles an hour is pretty darn impressive. 215 on the 216 on there, but you see we have to go so 144 on there, and then it has acceleration, sure, but it doesn't have enough acceleration. You only 180 going past that second speed trap. So, well, certainly a hell of a feat, especially being the oldest car here by quite some margin. In fact, 1964 is the vehicle. This wasn't quite fast enough. Which is a shame, because I love the Daytona. I was sneakily hoping it to do quite well lightweight, but it just wasn't quite fast enough for the Daytona. 178 miles an hour would be its speed. Now, another American car, the Viper ACR. Now, I know you're thinking, this is a Track-tor with a massive wing. Why would you want that? Well, my logic was, if I have a ton of downforce, I can carry more speed around these corners. And it has 1,000 horsepower, so it has enough power to go 200 miles an hour. And these cars will never reach their true top speed anyway, so what's the point of having a super high top speed? We're only going for about 220, 230 on average. Well, my plan was sound in a few ways. It had immense grip, as you can see there, even not on the banking over 200 miles an hour on the corner. My problem was, it wasn't fast enough elsewhere. It didn't have the sheer power. It didn't have the power it needed. It might have been the gears, but something was causing it to be just not very quick accelerating. No matter what I did for the tuning, it just couldn't break 206. No matter what I did. Even lowering the aerodynamics on that massive rear wing, it just couldn't go fast enough. I think that was the fastest I went is 206. Now, it did carry 165 miles an hour on the first corner, but it is just not good enough, you know? It's just not quite good enough, which is a shame, because again, I love the Viper ACR. It's so good. It's still a hell of a nerve-wracking lap record holder, but it just couldn't quite beat it. So it had an average speed of 188 miles an hour. Still not bad, you know, not bad for an oval circuit, but I was hoping for a little better from the Viper, I will be honest. My plan did not work. Now, this Mustang RTR Spec 5 is the second most powerful vehicle here, with 1,800 odd horsepower. It is 9 horsepower down on the Rimac Concept 2. Only thing is, this is rear-wheel drive and a Mustang. It has the Formula Drift engine in it, meaning 1,900 horsepower near enough, and it can't really keep up with it. It's very, very brutally fast down the straightaways, but as you can see in the corners, it's, I think terrifying is an understatement. When I was driving this car, 237 miles an hour though is amazing. And it's actually relatively decent through turn 1, but turn 2 it does not like, it gets very scary at turn 2. You turn in, you have to manage the throttle just enough so there's some movement, so you're not coasting, because if you lift off over so you crash. You have to have something, but not enough to spin it out, which is a very difficult balancing act, I must say. But if you get it right, you carry mega speed, 160 through that first corner, 167, and you have this all 1,900 horsepower to power to 205 on the second corner. And then you try and go through here and out. You can go 230 through there, but you don't really want to, because you will crash and die. 220 here was sketchy, then I hit the thing, and yeah. So, it was mental. However, in its mentalness, it did hit 192 mile an hour average. Yeah, it was a terrifying vehicle I never hope to drive again, but it did hit 192 miles an hour, which is not too bad, you know? Not too bad with the Mustang. Not too bad, if not terrifying at all, at 192 miles an hour around a corner. That's happened a lot, actually. a vehicle I was hoping to do significantly better, the McLaren F1, in 7th place, did 193 miles an hour, 1 mile an hour faster average than the crazy lunatic Mustang. The only difference is this is actually not impossible to control. You see, it's actually very nice to drive, and it makes a glorious noise. It does get still a little bit oversteery, however, compared to the Mustang, it's like driving an MX-5 or a TVR Speed 12. It's night and day. And it has 1100 horsepower from a turbocharged V12. And come on, it's still to this day the fastest naturally aspirated production car, so you'd expect it to do quite well. And well, 7th place is certainly impressive. 190 miles an hour on an oval, that with a few mega slides along with it, is very impressive, but it's not as good as I was hoping it to be, truth be told. I was expecting this to be magnificent, and it wasn't. Now, I put the rear wing on again for the same philosophy as the Viper. I think it's still sound having the aerodynamics on to give it more grip through turn 1, because this thing can go 270 miles an hour. It's never going to do that. So I think the wing does still help, but that could have contributed to a slightly lower speed, but it also meant more controllability, which meant I could push it more around the corners, which is obviously a very crucial thing in this aspect. So, the legendary McLaren F1 is only 1 mile an hour faster than a lunatic Mustang, with 193 miles an hour recorded on average around the oval. We go from a Mustang to a McLaren, then back to a Mustang ISH. The Unicorn gets, first off, very bullied. I feel very bullied by that Focus. I was very rude at that Focus. Anyway, all-wheel drive, 1400 methanol-fueled horsepower. It's insane. However, despite being an absolute insane monster, it's actually relatively easy to drive. And despite being a drift car, you put on some racing slicks and it actually handles quite well. And as a result, the Unicorn did 196 mile an hour average, which is again very, very good. Why is it not the best? Well, it doesn't have the top end speed. Once you hit around 5th gear or 6th gear, it kind of just stops accelerating very much. So it's surprisingly good through the corners and very good accelerating. However, it doesn't really have the top end, if you will, gearing. I don't know what it is about it, but it just was not very quick. Once you got past about 215 miles an hour, it really slowed down the acceleration front. But still, 196 miles an hour on an oval track is very interesting. Now, amusingly, this is very similar to Daytona in the tri-oval sense. Maybe a little steeper on one corner, but still similar to Daytona in that regard. And they hit around 200 miles an hour average, 205. So we still haven't cracked a typical NASCAR around here, but whatever. Very good through turn 1, as you can see. It just loses time and speed elsewhere, but still 196 miles an hour in a Mustang-ish is pretty darn impressive, if I do say so myself. You know this list is fast when the top 5 vehicles start out with the Mosel MT 900. One of the fastest vehicles in the game. Capable of going, what, 305 miles an hour or something? And you know what it can't do? It can't drive around ovals. It is terrifying. The back end lets go as you all over the place, like a madman. However, if you can get the back end in check, it is the first vehicle to crack a 200 mile an hour average around this track. Exactly 200 miles an hour on the dime. But it was terrifying. It was very similar to the Mustang, actually, the RTR. I hope to never have to drive this again around an oval track in X-Class configuration, because despite that rear wing, it has approximately 0 pounds of downforce on the rear, I swear to God. The back end lets go so much. I mean, you see it basically the first 2 laps were nothing but oversteer moments. Even on warm tires, it slides around like a maniac. But if you can get it right, you see 170 through there, then hitting the wall. It is so absurdly fast in a straight line. I think that has about 1,500 horsepower in it from the Lamborghini V12. Interestingly, the only vehicle to use the Lamborghini V12 today. Only one. This one normally has the go-to engine swap, but Only the Moser used it, which I feel very happy about, not using that engine too much. I feel it's very overused anyway. Moser, very good, if not very terrifying, being the first vehicle to hit the 200 mile per hour barrier around an oval track. Not a bad average, despite its terrifying driving characteristics. Where would this list be of the fastest cars around an oval if we didn't use the fastest car in the world? The Koenigsegg Agera RS. This has 1,300 odd horsepower from its factory engine, no modifications allowed on this one. And again, it was none other than terrifying. All I did was change the aerodynamics to make it a bit more grippy, and it didn't seem to work, because this is by far the heaviest vehicle, except for maybe the tractor. And the fastest, it's the heaviest of the serious vehicles, which is why I might have spun it on the first lap. You didn't see anything, okay? Nothing happened on lap 1, you saw nothing. Yeah, it is heaviest, just over 3,000 pounds, I believe. Yeah, it was tough driving this thing around. It just didn't have the handling. I did get sideswiped by a Focus earlier. That luckily did not affect my run, because this run I think was pretty good, but yeah, it was tough. It was a tough one to drive because it was much heavier than the other vehicles, meaning its weight around the banking was much different, and that meant it was more challenging. But it did hit 255 miles an hour around the oval, on the straightaway I should say, and so yeah, that sheer raw speed did help it immensely. And yeah, it reached 203 miles an hour for an average around the course. That's pretty good. Now it did hit almost 250 on the banking before going into a wall, but yeah, it was a tough bugger to drive, but I had a lot of fun doing it. I love the Koenigsegg. It looks a lot better in person than it does in a video game, but regardless of what you think of it, 203 mile an hour average around an oval track with that steep of a first corner is pretty darn impressive, if I do say so myself. I threw in the Porsche 918 as kind of a joke, because it was never the fastest of the Holy Trinity. In fact, it was the slowest of the hypercar Holy Trinity. But in Forza, it's actually the fastest. Because, unlike the McLaren P1 and the Ferrari, this can get 1,400 horsepower out of its V8, while they can only muster around 1,100, 1,200 out of their engines. It's a mental vehicle, and it's all-wheel drive, which would be proving very useful in these next two cars, as you can go flat out pretty much everywhere. The four-wheel steering also helps immensely, 174th in turn 1, thanks to that four-wheel steering. And then, of course, that sheer power from that glorious V8 does also really rather help go down the straightaway, and then carrying so much speed through turn 3, well, turn 2, but whatever. It is an immensely fast, murderous vehicle. I am very pleased with it. I've always said the Porsche 918 is my favorite of the Holy Trinity, and I will stand by that statement because I love it. And I think it's a brilliant looking car, has a great noise, and 205 miles an hour around an oval track is quite impressive. It's 2 miles an hour faster than the Koenigsegg Agera RS because of that all-wheel drive nature. And the fact it has 100 more horsepower, that too, but, you know, all in all, 918, I am not disappointed by at all with 205 miles an hour on an oval track. However, second place will go to the quietest car here, the Rimac Concept 2. There were no Swedish hill climbs in this area, so I was all good without rolling over. And I didn't have to use that fire extinguisher in the back. And of course, 1,887 horsepower in this vehicle, which is 9 more than that Mustang. It is the most powerful car here. But unlike the Mustang, it's all-wheel drive and built for 1,900 horsepower, so it's, you know, controllable. And it's a blast to drive. I personally don't like electric cars very much, but I must say I really like the Rimac. Even my cold heart will admit I love the Rimac. I think it's a brilliant looking vehicle. I think it's an interesting sounding vehicle, not my favorite sound of all time, but that whir of the electric motor is very intriguing. And I like it. there are very few electric vehicles I've ever liked, but this is one of them. And of course, hitting 208 miles an hour around the oval course as an average is also a very big benefit, you know? It's a monster around the course. It has the all-wheel drive, meaning, you know, you can actually turn and hit the accelerator whenever you want to, more or less, providing you're not an idiot on the final corner. And yeah, it's a very solid vehicle. I really like it. And, you know, it's 3 miles an hour faster than a Porsche 918 on average around this course. Very solid vehicle. I highly recommend it. I mean, I know it's already passed, but, you know, auction house maybe? Anyway, 208 miles an hour on an oval track is one hell of an impressive feat for the best electric car I've ever seen and driven. But the winner is a bit of a surprise to me, the Maserati MC12 Corsa. This road legal race car, I think it's not even road legal, this race car, this proper race car, has a few benefits. First, a few thousand horsepower. It's very powerful. About, what, 1,500 horsepower in this vehicle nearly? And second, most importantly of all, it's a race car. So it has racing slicks, not the Forza racing tires I was using previously. So it has proper racing slicks, and it has a ton of downforce. Racing in the GT1 category means you go to Le Mans. Means the downforce is very immense and very streamlined, even if I do manage to spin it like an idiot. You know, that doesn't happen. You didn't see that again. Nothing happened. I didn't visit the infield at all. Just gonna cut that part out. Also, I understand that there are cars facing through stuff. Don't worry about it. But yeah, this vehicle... remember how the Rimac was second place with 208? This did 219 miles an hour average around the course. Why? Because at turn 1, I recorded 206 miles an hour around turn 1. At the checkpoint. 206! That boosts the average immensely, because I think the fastest Prius was 180 through there, so it makes sense mathematically why that would boost the speed up so much. And then hitting 250 on the way out is immense. The vehicle is outlandishly fast. But there you go. If you want a lunatic oval racer that's actually faster than the NASCARs, the only vehicle to be faster than the NASCARs actually, around an oval track, go get yourself a GT1 Le Mans racer with 1,100 horsepower around that. Yeah, Maserati MC12 Corsa. Who would have thought it would have been the fastest car around an oval? But that's not the end of the story. You see, just for the fun, I wanted to try DJ Lime's tune with the Ferrari 599 Evo, because this vehicle is the fastest vehicle in Forza history, 320 plus miles an hour indicated. However, there's a problem. In order to get that, you don't have any downforce at all. In fact, in the rear, I'm pretty sure there's just no downforce at all. So, when you say you go around a corner on a banking at 230 miles an hour, you don't so much take the corner, but spin out and destroy every single inch of fencing nearby. And, well, I guess it hits 260 miles an hour every single corner, the back end, let go. It was terrifying. And then you have the murderous speed and acceleration, followed by the murderous handling. It was terrifying. As a result, despite being the fastest car in Forza history, the mental 599 Evo could only hit 206 miles an hour average around here because it didn't have the rear end grip. I'm not sure that's because it's phasing through the floor, or if there's no downforce on it, if it's a little bit of both, I don't know. What I do know is I hope to never drive it around here again because it's terrifying. And I hope no one has to do that unless you're a mentalist. Or you want to do some wall riding, that's also a thing. But, yeah. That just goes to show that it's not necessarily the speed that makes the most around here. It's the handling. It's the high-speed handling that makes the most around here. But there you go. That is going to be it for this episode of Forza Horizon 4. I'll be back with more